Hey, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show. This is actually show number 8.
Wow.
Believe it or not. Yeah, right?
I'm glad to be back. I wasn't here last week. Rhonda and I were in training getting recertified.
Right. How'd that go?
So, that was excellent. That dog, if you need dope found, call us.
There you
Rhonda
go.
will find it.
Yeah, she's a good dog. Good dog with a good handler. So my name is George Holt, and this is my co-host Gil Contreras. And today Kent's out. Kent actually had a family obligation today. So those of you Kent fans are going to have to... fans of Kent Lee will have to
we're going to set up a Facebook page for him. Friends
next
of Kent
week.
Lee.
Yeah, Friends of Kent Lee. Yeah, free Kent Lee. So we're here, and again, the purpose of our show is to give you your weekly dose of your bitter dose, if you will, of truth from our perspective as police veterans. And just with the two of us here today, we have while we have a common background, we have pretty diverse perspectives on things. And, that's what we try to bring to the table. And this is why we encourage people, call in. Of course, the number is 323-293-3375, or you can tweet us, Ride Along Radio, and, give us some feedback. Hell, we even welcome some pushback on some of the topics. Because we read some of the YouTube comments that come along, and they're less than charitable. But that's okay, because it means that you're engaged, right? And it means that people are listening. And we have been getting some very positive feedback as well. So, as always, we start with the News of the Day segment. That segues smoothly into the topic of the day, so I'll actually talk about that a little bit right now. The topic of today is civilians carrying concealed weapons, the pros and cons. And by concealed weapons, we mean handguns, whether they be pistols or revolvers. We're not talking about knives or anything like that.
Or ARs.
Or AR, or long guns or anything like that, right? No shotguns, no rifles. We're talking about handguns, pistols, revolvers, guns that people would carry concealed. And I mean legally, of course, people who are permitted to do that. And what are the pros and cons of it? And we've actually have a couple of video reels that show both sides of it. It shows why you probably want to think about doing that if you haven't, but why you need to be careful if you do. Right. So and with today's world and what just happened in France, last week, and what's going to happen here one day, and I've always taken that perspective, especially later on in my career when I got into aviation law enforcement and started taking more of a counterterrorism slant to my career as opposed to anti-gang like in the first part of my career. Once we started dealing with terrorism, we always said it's not if, it's when. Right. And so
and it's not only terrorism, but we have an insurgency on our southern border.
Definitely.
The drug cartels have so much money because so many people in America are smoking dope and smoking crack and smoking meth.
And that's terrorism. This is narco-terrorism.
Exactly. But the Mexican cartels are operating daily in America and especially in Southern California. Southern
California and Phoenix, the Arizona borders, specifically Phoenix, for those of you who live in the Arizona area, that's something that's kind of quietly kept. But I've got friends on Phoenix PD, and some of the stories they tell you, man, you wonder why this is not national news. Some of the stuff that goes down.
They call it Cartel City.
Yeah, exactly. Cartel City. And it's the kidnapping capital of the United States of America.
Right. And there was just a major arrest by LA Impact here about a week ago. I saw.
Now, what's LA Impact for people who don't know?
LA Impact is a task force of narcotics investigators, and they go after the high rollers, and they're dealing with these drug cartels in LA County on a daily basis. And, these guys are operating here. They're in public. They're renting houses. They're renting these little businesses in a lot of these southeast Los Angeles County cities. And, they're trying to have an influence on the drug trade, on some of the legitimate businesses, on some of the politicians from these local, mostly Latino cities. And so it is a problem. And when things go wrong and they start shooting at each other, it's citizens who are going to be in the crosshairs.
Right. Exactly right. So, and some people may look at this with a John Desai and say, well, those guys have a law enforcement background. They do not support civilians carrying concealed. And there's some law enforcement officers who don't support that, but you're not looking at two of them.
Well, I think, a lot of law enforcement would prefer that citizens be armed. A lot of the older ones. But a lot of cops have this kind of snobby attitude about CCW.
Right, like, an elitist attitude.
Elitist, that's the word I was looking for. It was like, well, we have them, but we need them. We're the police.
Right.
You're just a citizen. And, if you're the victim of a crime or the potential victim of a crime and you can't take action, you got 4 to 5 minutes to wait for somebody to come help you.
If anybody's even notified.
And that can be a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly right. So so the news of the day segment is an arrest that occurred in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, after an incident in which a woman who was actually legally permitted to carry a concealed weapon pulled her gun on someone who she felt was threatening her. We're going to roll that video now. Okay, we'll have that up in a minute. We're good? Okay.
Sherry McLean was loading groceries into her car this past Saturday in the crowded Walmart parking lot on Old Fort Parkway in Murfreesboro. That's when a strange man approached, surprising her, and she pulled her revolver.
I have never been so afraid of anything in my whole life, I don't think.
So if McLean was acting in self-defense, why was she the one arrested? Here's her mugshot.
This guy is the bad guy, and I'm the one in handcuffs walking away.
There was no reason at the time for her to have perceived any legitimate threat.
Sergeant Kyle Evans says officers at the scene talked with McLean and the man who approached her. It turns out he had just bought cigarettes and asked her for a light. Witnesses confirmed this, and security video showed the man, who we could not reach for comment, never got closer than 10 feet to McLean. When she pulled the gun, he ran back into the store to call 911.
Certainly, pulling a gun on someone who just simply asks a question, who is not displaying a weapon or displaying any aggressive behavior, is not appropriate.
Clearly, this is just an example of a gun owner that doesn't need to own a gun.
Keely Benoit's 7-year-old son and his grandmother found themselves in McLean's crosshairs as the man ran past them.
And when she looked up, the gun was being pointed at the three of them, and the lady kept repeating, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to kill you.
Clearly something spooked McLean. For whatever reason, she felt the stranger was a threat, and she can't believe she was arrested for self-defense.
What are we supposed to do if we can't protect ourselves? I'm 67 years old.
Okay, so and basically the situation goes, they go on from there to talk about the charges that she's facing. Were that in California, it would be assault with a deadly weapon, because she didn't just pull the gun and brandish it. She actually pointed the loaded gun at the victim. And she's not facing any gun-related charges, though, because she's legally permitted to carry the gun. It's a legally owned, legally carried gun. But it was judged that she overreacted, if you will, which I think is most people's concern about that. People look at the situations where they feel that people who carry concealed weapons maybe don't have the background or don't have the screening or don't have the training to carry concealed weapons. Because let's be honest, there's people in our society that feel police officers shouldn't be able to carry their guns off duty.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So those people feel that police officers with the background, the training, the vetting, the screening, if police officers shouldn't be allowed to carry guns off duty, because people say, well, what do you need that for? Right. How many times have you been asked by civilians, what are you carrying your gun off duty for? Right. What do you need that for?
Right.
Right. So there's people who just don't get that. So certainly there's people who feel that civilians shouldn't be able to do it if police can't do it.
Right. And police officers, when they get into an officer-involved shooting, the one thing that they'll always say is, I feared for my life, and so I pulled my weapon and I fired my rounds or whatever.
Right. They'll articulate.
So, but the one thing that cops don't like is when anybody says, well, under those circumstances, you shouldn't have perceived a real threat. And what that deputy just said in the little clip there is that this 67-year-old woman shouldn't have perceived the guy a threat. Now, I submit to you that it's not his position to say what she felt. He doesn't know what she felt. He doesn't know if she was afraid. Now, if you want to argue whether it was legitimate or not, I guess you can have that argument. But I'll tell you, when I was still on the job, I was driving home one night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and, like most cops, I procrastinated before I went to work. I needed gas. I didn't get it. On the way home, I needed to get gas. So I'm on the 10 freeway coming out of South Los Angeles. I get to Crenshaw by the 10 freeway, and I go, man, I got to get gas or I'm going to run out.
Right.
So I get off at Crenshaw. I pull into a gas station on the southwest corner, and I kind of cruise the parking lot. Nobody around. Cool. I pulled to the closest thing to the little booth where the guy, little Mexican guy in there asleep. So I knock on the window. I give him $10. I'm going to get $10 and get out of Dodge, right?
Right.
I give him $10. I go back to my car. I start to pump my gas, and it didn't have the little clip to let it run, so I'm holding it. I'm holding it with my right hand, and I'm facing my car. And then just as soon as I start putting gas, I hear two voices behind me. And I can tell
Two voices.
Two voices,
yeah.
African Americans,
yeah.
young men. and they're talking loud, really loud for 1 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but then I heard one of the voices say, well, I'm going to go ask the motherfucker. Okay. So.
Just like that, he said it?
Just like that.
Okay.
I'm going to go ask the motherfucker. So that's what I heard. Okay. So I'm looking in the glass on the gas pump, and I can see a body now coming from the sidewalk coming towards me. So I switch hands. I pull my little Colt 380 Colt Commando that I loved. And I used to appendix carry here. And I put it in my hand and just drop it down. And I'm still pouring my gas, but I'm watching him in the glass.
Right.
And when he's about 20 feet, I let go and I turn and I face him, and the gun's in my hand. And he can clearly see it. So when he sees me turning with a gun in my hand, he just stops.
Right.
And I said, what do you want? And he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and I said, I'm a police officer. What do you want? And when I said that, he looked at me. He looked at the gun. He said, I don't want a motherfucking thing from you. And he turned
around and walked away.
I said, okay. I put my gun back, finished pouring my gas, and I left.
Okay.
That's the same incident.
And that's probably what she should have done. The thing is, she pointed the gun at him. That's assault, man. Especially if it's a loaded gun. She actually pointed the gun. She didn't wield the gun. She didn't brandish the gun.
I don't know if it's assault or if it's 417.
Well, no, because 417 is brandishing under the California Penal Code for people outside of California and outside of law enforcement. Brandishing is displaying the gun, presenting or displaying. It's assault when you point the loaded gun at somebody. And the other thing is this: as the guy ran away into the Walmart to call the police on her, she continued to point the gun at him and people who were standing around, because I guess he didn't care about the backdrop, so he ran in front of some people, and she's pointing the gun still at everybody and now obviously the guy's running away.
Right.
Is he still a threat? You know? So, and I don't know what they're going to do with this lady.
Right.
But the problem is that when you do things like that, it calls into question, well, why are you so fearful that you had to point a gun? And then I think she used the words, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. That's never a good thing if you're trying to act in self-defense and the guy's running away. So there's some extenuating circumstances, and we've seen the whole video. The video was just too long to present on the show like that. And if you guys want to see the whole thing, it's you can just Google Murfreesboro, Tennessee woman arrested after she pulled a gun in self-defense. It's on News Channel 5.
I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out that I don't know that if I was the officer who responded, and even if it's, oh, yeah, and she pointed it, and then she was tracking him, and the weapon was at me and my kid. Okay. You know, every criminal I've ever arrested, every criminal that I've seen arrested on video, the first thing they say is, I didn't even do nothing.
Right, sure.
I didn't do nothing.
Sure.
They all claim to be innocent.
And had he been an actual criminal, I don't think we would even know that this happened, because an actual criminal wouldn't have run back in Walmart and called the police on the lady. An actual criminal would have done what the guy did with you and said, I don't want a thing from you, and took off. So I think the guy legitimately just wanted a light, you know?
I don't know. I don't know what's on his mind. You know, why you're approaching 67-year-old ladies as they're carrying their bags to ask them for anything, especially a light for a cigarette.
I don't smoke, so I'm not. You know, I don't get that either.
Exactly. But I want to ask you this, and after the break, when our guest comes in, I want him to respond to this also. The story I just told you about my incident.
Yeah.
If let's say the Mexican in the little booth wasn't asleep and he called police, when he see me with the gun, me talking.
Right, and he didn't hear you say I'm a police officer, whatever. Sure.
So you're the officer. You respond. The two guys are at the bus bench, and I'm at the car just putting my thing away. And I say, hey, well, you know, off-duty police officer, you know, and I tell you the story I just told you. What happens to me?
Man, that's a good question. You know, it depends on what those guys have to say, because again, most guys who are intent on doing something to you, not only are they not going to call the police, they're not going to stick around for the police to show up. So it would be depend on if those guys were there and what their side of the story was, right? Plus what the witness in the booth has to say. That's a good question. But here's my question for you. Not in your situation, because this wasn't an issue for you. But in this lady's situation, even if they drop all criminal charges, you know that the sheriff is going to have to review this incident to decide. And the reason the sheriff would review it is because the sheriff issues concealed carry permits for people who don't know. And so the sheriff's name is on that endorsement. He's the one who he or she's the one who endorses that this woman can carry a concealed weapon legally. So now, do you think that they'll pull her permit?
I think they probably will.
Probably, because they don't want the drama. I mean,
and I think they probably should, based on what they said, she said, and how she did it, how she handled the gun. They probably should. But they should require her to go and get additional training and then reapply. I think she should at least have the option to get retrained.
And that's the thing. What's in the training? I mean, and we'll talk about that after the break. But yeah, for sure. And it's a liability because now next time, say she shoots the next guy, and they're going to say, "Well, Sheriff, you didn't pull a permit after the first incident."
Right.
So to be on the side of liability, they're going to go ahead and do that. Right. So hey, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back again, give us a call 323-293-3375. You can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio. You can even send us an email, ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. And we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. All right, and welcome back to Ride Along Radio. We're back after the break, and again, our topic today is civilians carrying concealed weapons, the pros and the cons, and we've been talking about the pros and the cons prior to the break, and we just showed a video that showed what the potential downside of that is. We have a guest in the studio today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. His name is Stanley Campbell, and I'll give you a little bio on Stan. Stan spent 20 years with the Oklahoma City Police Department. He retired at the rank of lieutenant. He was a field training officer, which is an officer that trains new officers when they come out of the academy, and a supervisor. And he spent 10 years on the tactical team, and part of his responsibilities there was he was a part of a sniper team. He was also assigned to the academy where he conducted training, and as a supervisor, of course, he had to investigate uses of force in the field. You actually were a use of force trainer at the academy too, right?
Yes, sir.
And also complaints against officers in the field in administrative and supervisory capacity. So, hey, Stan, welcome to the show, man. I'm glad you could come in.
Thanks for having me, George. Gil.
And so Stan, when he retired, he co-founded this company, CCW SAFE. Can you tell us what CCW SAFE is and how you came to be involved in that?
That's correct. Approximately a year prior to retiring, we developed a business model with the name CCW SAFE. CCW SAFE is a legal service membership plan, of course, designed by former law enforcement officers. And what we do is it's for concealed carry permit holders and law enforcement officers that take care of their off-duty.
Okay.
And if you have, and that's for self-defense, deadly force situations. We cover all 50 states, and we cover your attorneys and your investigators and expert witness costs, your most significant costs that go along with your criminal and your civil.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and law enforcement officers out there may be wondering this. So if I'm an off-duty law enforcement officer and I get into, I'm working off-duty, or if I'm not working off-duty, I'm just getting gas at 10 Freeway in Crenshaw, why would I need CCW SAFE? Wouldn't the department's legal defense fund cover me if I was involved in an off-duty shooting?
Correct. In most of your major law enforcement agencies across the nation, they would be covered, because they're considered a police officer 24 hours a day.
Right.
But there are instances, especially there's several chiefs across the nation that don't recognize, or you'll be in violation if you carry a weapon that's not associated with something that the chief or the sheriff says it's within guidelines, although it's a legal weapon, and that's one of the things that we do. If it's a legal firearm, we'll still cover you, even if your department walks away.
And what Stan means by that is police officers have a certain list of guns that they can carry on duty as well as off duty. And sometimes the lists vary. Sometimes it's just the same. You carry it on duty, you carry it off duty. But like at our old department, you had a list of on-duty guns, and then off-duty, you could carry anything from the list of on-duty guns plus a couple extras they put on the off-duty list.
It just had to be approved by the Army.
It had to be right. It had to be something that was approved. You couldn't just go get a gun from anywhere and then you're good.
Right.
And this is what Stan means. So if I'm carrying a gun, say my favorite gun isn't on that list, I may still want to carry it, which legally I can do. But if something happens, the department may not indemnify me for that. Or if I'm working off-duty, say I'm doing security for a rapper or something that the department's not going to sign off on me doing, and something goes down, the department may not indemnify me for that because it's not an approved off-duty activity.
Absolutely.
Right?
As long as you're within the law, we're going to cover you. We actually go one step further than most of our competitors, which is we cover any use of force incident that goes along with defending your life. That, too, helps with police officers because if something's political, if you pick up a cement squirrel and hit somebody upside the head to defend your life, the department might not find that to be, appropriate and try to walk away.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's so important, and people don't think about the department will leave you high and dry.
You could be Officer of the Year today.
That's right.
And sitting in front of a grand jury tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And the department will take 10 steps back from you.
Yeah, hero to zero.
Yep.
We call that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it certainly could happen. So another interesting thing that you said too was that a year prior to retirement.
That's correct.
You started setting this up. And for you law enforcement officers out there, start thinking about what you're going to do post your career. You know, my career ended a little earlier than I anticipated because I was retired due to an injury. But my business partner and I had our things set up prior to. And you have to start thinking. I mean, Gil can tell you, you got to have a life after this. And so you got to start thinking about what it is that you're going to do. This way you don't have to stick around the department longer than you need to. How many cops did we work with who were miserable, that wanted to retire, but they couldn't retire? That's right. And as a result, they're miserable, and everybody around them is miserable, and they're miserable to the people they meet in the field.
That's right.
And it's just a miserable situation. You know what I mean? So
yes, absolutely.
You're going to, one day, I always told my officers this, especially at my last department, one day you're going to leave that job. Now, you may leave it because they make you leave. You may leave it because you want to leave. You may leave in the back of a coroner's van. But one day you're going to leave this job, and you got to have a plan. Unless you take option 3, you got to have a plan for what comes next.
That's correct.
You know, don't get caught out there, law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Stan, this is something that's available in all 50 states?
Yes, sir. All 50 states we're covered. You have to have a concealed carry permit or license by that state, one of the 50 states, for you to have coverage or be an active law enforcement officer.
Does it have to be the state of your residence? Like I know Utah will cover people, will issue Utah carry permits to people who are not Utah residents, but sometimes they will be valid in another state. Like in North Carolina, I can live in North Carolina, get a Utah concealed carry permit, and it's valid in North Carolina, even though I'm not a Utah resident. We
do cover non-resident permits.
Okay, that's what my question.
The only issue is you still have to be legal within your state. So we'll cover your home and your vehicle, your business, but if you can't carry concealed in that particular state, I mean, we actually require you to follow the laws of
course. Yeah, like any insurance essentially is going to do. You got to be right within the law in order for
that's correct.
Any kind of insurance. So what do you think about that situation we just reviewed with the lady in Murfreesboro, Tennessee?
With the limited information available, I mean, I too would say she overreacted. The issue with a lot of concealed carriers is that they fail to do some of those key things that you guys spoke about before the break, which is to get continual training, to be trained at all sometimes. Because continual training, is important. Other things that they also don't think about. If you are a true victim of a violent encounter, you actually should call 911 first. And we all know,
you should be the one calling the police.
Is the victim,
right?
So
wait, say that part again.
The first one that calls 911 is the victim.
Exactly.
Yes.
So remember that.
That's right.
Write that down.
Yeah, exactly.
See, and then you also run into issues with, like Gil. I listened to his story, and law enforcement officers are the worst because they'll just handle the situation, but they just think, I handled it. I wasn't really a victim. But you didn't go one step further, which is to call 911 yourself. I didn't hear you say that you did anyway.
Right, I didn't.
That's right.
I put my gun away, pumped my gas, and took off.
Because you're salty and you're comfortable in your own, with what you did.
And also, we generally feel that we'd be given the benefit of the doubt. And then we also know that that's going to be a hassle for the department to come out and whatever else. And so sometimes we're just kind of like you said, complacent.
That's right.
And we're like,
yeah,
I'm good.
So you really have to take care of yourself because, there's a lot of us that's been burnt by our police departments, just depending on, how political something is. I mean, they will, throw you under the bus as well.
Absolutely.
Throw you under the bus, back up, take the little plug out of the oil pan, let the oil drip on you.
It drips a little.
And it drips, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they sure will throw you under the bus. Never get that twisted, law enforcement officers.
That's right. Absolutely.
So you think that I should have called? I should have then called?
Absolutely.
Really?
You should have. Yes, I do. And the thing about it, you have to understand. Like 10 years ago, probably when we were in our prime. I don't know when you retired, but
it's probably more than 10. When I was in my
just
prime.
A little bit. I mean, but you still look good, Greg. So 10 years ago, things were a little bit different. Because you talked about cops. Cops use common sense, but now most of these departments are hiring police officers. In my opinion, there's a big difference. They don't know how to operate in the gray area. Everything's black and white, and a young green rookie will try to do something to you if the clerk calls 911 first.
Well, that I agree with because I think there's been this trend over the last probably 5 years, and I was teaching at a vocational college for the last 7 years, and that was one of the things that I talked about is there's this the old Adam 12 protectors of the community versus today's new law enforcement officers. In the California Penal Code, we're defined as peace officers.
That's correct.
And those were the kind of guys that kind of led me to want to even be a cop. Were those guys?
Exactly.
They were problem solvers. They didn't dress like Navy SEAls. In fact, they looked like Adam 12. But I think that's been lost when and I think it was September 11th is where I see the switch when we said, okay, well, now local law enforcement is now our first line of defense against terrorism. And so we begin to tweak their training. We begin to tweak their weapons that they were carrying in their vehicles. And it began to tweak their mindset. Correct. And it went from the guardian mindset to the warrior mindset.
Definitely.
And I think, like today, I'd be afraid. Like when that happened to me at Crenshaw on the 10, if the guy had called the police and they had responded, I think they would have said, "Oh, okay, you good?" Well, yeah, I'm good. I think they would have. That would have been the conversation. Sure. I would have been gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you're right. But you also have to think about, with him making that phone call and you're still there, or the guys that approached you, if they made the phone call, and said that just some crazy dark guy pointed a gun at me.
Some crazy Mexican with a gun.
If they made the phone call, you too would be lacking in your duties to protect yourself. So,
that's true. Because again, whoever calls 911 first, but the good thing is, being a law enforcement officer, once you get the chance to identify yourself, then you're going to be able to get your side of the story out. But you just don't want them painting the initial picture that goes to the dispatcher and then goes to the officer, and they show up thinking it's something totally different. By the time they get there, they may think you tried to rob them.
No, you're right. And you're saying something significant, George, because you're saying as a law enforcement officer, we're awarded, a little bit extra leeway. Right. Well, citizens are not.
Let me ask you guys this question. The scenario that I described prior to the break, the same scenario, except this time I'm not an off-duty cop. I'm just Joe Citizen, but I did the exact same thing, said the exact same thing, except I'm not a police officer. Just, what do you want? I have a gun. What should happen to me? If the police had been called, what should have?
See, and here's the thing. For me, as an officer responding to that, responding to an officer with that versus responding to a citizen who is a concealed weapon permittee for that. With the officer, to me, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt because I know the level of training that you have, and I know that you probably didn't overreact, especially if you're not a new police officer. You probably have seen enough and done enough that I can rely on your training experience and your judgment to say this guy's a vet. He wouldn't have pulled that gun unless he felt he had a reason. Whereas with a guy who works at AutoZone or something, and he's on his way home and he pulls his gun, a part of me is wondering, did you really have to do that? Where I may not even question that really with you as a police officer. That's just me. I don't know.
But let me ask you this: what is the difference between what I did and what the woman did? I mean, there's some difference in.
Well, there's some difference because she pointed the gun. You didn't point the gun.
Right. But let me add this, and I'm glad you said that because all I did was I just had it down straight down, and I just turned to face him.
Right.
If that were to happen to me today, same scenario. Now that I've had the cool training, the cool tactical training that I didn't have back then, because I took your gunfighters course that your company offers.
Solutions Group International, by the way. Check us out.
I probably would have stepped back and brought it up here. I probably would have been in this position versus down here in this position.
Right.
So, this is a very different thing. And I think that, both the suspects and the guy inside the booth would have said, "Oh no," I think if he seen me, this would have made him really.
But then also it's got a lot to do with what's said, okay? Because brandishing, at least under the California Penal Code, is displaying or wielding that weapon in a threatening manner. You saying I'm a police officer, what do you want? Is not going to be considered the threatening manner that the one woman pointing the gun at the guy he's running away saying, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to shoot you." You know what I mean?
You don't think
so that may be part of it
having
too.
the gun out and having it visible.
Especially when you had it out and you had it visible, it was visibly displayed. But see, a key part of that brandishing, at least in California, a key part of 417 is it has to be in a threatening manner, right? And then when you point the gun, then all the verbiage goes out the window. Right. Then it's just a crime,
Correct.
But so that's a little different. I think that's the difference also. Between what you did and what she did is not only did you not point the gun, you did not say anything threatening either. And if anything, honestly, those guys coming up, seeing you have a gun, and then hearing you say you're a police officer, for the average guy, especially if he's a criminal and has dealt with police his whole career, he thinks I'm probably not going to get shot. Whereas if you were just some dude with a gun, he doesn't know who you are or what you'll do. He knows that police officer If he shoots him, he's not just going to be able just to get in his car and leave. It's not going to be a random street homicide. It's going to be something that officer is going to have to some kind of way articulate. And police point their guns at people all day, every day. Somebody right now is getting their gun pointed at them by the police, and they're not going to get shot.
That's right.
I mean, that happens all the time. If we had shot everybody that we pointed our guns at, there'd be no room in this building.
Yes.
If you filled up
with
all the bodies, you know what I mean? So, yeah, pointing your guns is a way of life as a police officer, at least in certain areas.
Yes.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you're always going to drop the hammer. And so I think that maybe when you said police officer, the guy actually might have been a little bit relieved, because now he knows he can turn his back on you and walk away. Did he walk or he ran away?
No, he walked.
See what I mean? Had he just thought you were some citizen with a gun and you might have shot him, I don't think he would have coolly walked away. Maybe not.
George, but just to add to that or piggyback your thought, Gil, in the 80s, people were afraid of, folks pointing guns at them. Mm-hmm. But it's even obvious. You say you're a police officer, and you told him, you asked, what do you want?
Right.
And it's an odd response just to walk away.
Mm-hmm. And to say what he said.
Exactly. And
the way he said it, and then turn around and walk away. You know what I mean?
So my point is that, citizens and police alike, they really need to, understand that the day and age of people just being afraid of guns being pointed at them is gone.
Right.
So you have to go one step further and continue your education and training. Mm-hmm. Find a great organization that teaches how to handle weapons. Like what George has.
Right.
Solutions Group International.
That's right. And it's just really important. And once again, and that's one thing that we strive for our customers and our members, is that we don't want you to be treated as a suspect when the officers arrive. We want you to be treated as a victim of a violent encounter. And that's what Gil was. But he, too, knowing that in the middle, he's going to be all right once he says, hey, I'm an officer and I put this out. But I'm sorry, Gil, I don't like anybody pointing guns at me. Mm-hmm. So you'll get these young officers that come up and they're going to respond the way they should tactically, and they're going to point guns at you. So I say you still go one step further and make yourself a victim for a second and then be on your way. Even if you're not going to stay, just say this happened, here's what they look like, and walk away.
If I'm going to call 911, I'm certainly going to stay.
Okay.
I'm not going to just drive away and say, oh, yeah, he's last seen westbound, and then have somebody else at a felony stop me.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what I'm looking at you, and I can feel that Gil doesn't want to be bothered with this, so.
Yeah. Well, I just think that, if that in that scenario, if that were to happen today, even if I was an off-duty police officer, some officer might be trying to, add something to it, and especially in today's environment where there's this, kind of anti-cop, especially from the black community. I'm Mexican, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But if I was a white officer, certainly somebody, some sergeant or something might want to look at it differently, because these are just different times. But the point I'm trying to make with my story is that I don't see my story so different from her story. When the guy approached me and I heard him coming and was watching him in the glass and got close enough that I wanted to stop him, I didn't know what he wanted. Number one, I didn't know what he wanted.
Right.
But it's 1 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody around, and all of a sudden there's these two black dudes talking loud, using foul language. I don't know what they want. I'm not, in fear for my life just yet, but I want to stop them. And it seems to me that that's what she was trying to do.
Yes.
Why is this guy approaching a 67-year-old woman to ask to light a cigarette? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Again, not being a smoker, I don't know how. I know I see smokers outside in the cold smoking. I see smokers driving down the street when it's raining with their window cracked smoking. So I guess it's a pretty addictive thing, but I don't know. Lapse of judgment.
But the point is that, what is so different from her thought, like, hey, what does this guy I want to stop him?
Yes.
What's so different from my thought, hey, what does this guy want?
Well, here's the thing, though. You're 1 o'clock in the morning in an area that has a relatively high crime rate, and you're being approached at a gas station where people are often robbed, right? So the setup for you is a lot different than some lady at Walmart in the middle of the day when there's a bunch of people around.
But George, I believe that Gil has the advantage of experience. I try to take away color, out of the situation because it's really what you did and the way you responded, which was you let them know that I am not a victim. you picked the wrong person to do.
Right. If that's your intention,
that's correct.
Try again.
Right.
That's correct. So, a lot of these people, who don't have the training that we're afforded, that's not going to be their response. I often, or people laugh at me when I get approached, whether it be panhandler or anyone that approaches. I don't want anyone approaching me at all. When people approach me, I always say, we don't want any, even if it's just if I'm alone.
Right.
And then they say want any what? And I say, exactly. Right. And when I say that and I keep moving,
exactly.
They know, don't play with me. You've chosen the wrong one, and I'm not a victim.
Right.
Now, on that, we talked about the ISIS threat. We talked about the narco-terrorism threat, the street crime threat. You had a video that you wanted to introduce.
Right. The reason I want to introduce the video is because this is something that I used to teach when I was teaching at the vocational college, and that is that in today's world, with all the things that we talked about, in today's world, you as a private citizen have to be prepared to take care of yourself.
Right.
911 is only responsive after, by the time they get the call. When it comes out on the radio and you're in the car, 450 man with a gun, shots fired.
Right.
When you get there, it's over.
Sure.
That incident is already over. Now I'm coming to find out if there's anybody left. Is the suspect still around?
Or what if it's a situation like we saw in Paris last week, like you guys saw in Oklahoma City? Was that 94, 95? 95. 911 gets overwhelmed sometimes.
Exactly.
So
or if it's a major earthquake.
Major earthquake or civil disturbance. There's all kind of times where 911 is not coming immediately.
They're not coming. And so, I think today, in today's world, each citizen has to be prepared to take care of themselves.
Definitely.
And so, and it's unfortunate because if you live in a communist state like California, where
the People's Republic of California,
where you have all these progressive ideas, the social experiment that is just killing the state, with laws like Prop 47 and all this anti-gun thing. You can't have a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds because 11 rounds scares us. I don't understand any of the rationale for any of this nonsense. But if you live in a communist state like this one, where you can't even get a CCW permit, for God's sake. You
can, but
if you live in LA County, let me restate. If you live in LA County, you can't get one. I have this kid who was a former student of mine. And he's working security and he does some stuff. And he goes, "Hey, how do I get a CCW?" I said, "Where do you live?" "Oh, I live over." "Oh, yeah, you got to move."
Yeah, essentially.
To where? Is it San Bernardino County? That's where you got to go.
In Southern California, all of the counties in Southern California issue CCW permits on a regular basis, except for LA County. And my joke to people when they ask about that is, well, I'm going to apply for my CCW from the LA County Sheriff. I said, if you get it, they'll deliver it to you on Fantasy Island, and it will be brought to you by a leprechaun riding a unicorn. Wow. And that's the chances you have of getting a CCW permit in California. But let's get into this video.
So the video is just, God, what's her name? Megyn Kelly from Fox News. She's interviewing a doctor who works for the FBI, and he's talking about how citizens really need to prepare themselves, in the event of a thing like Paris. You have to be able to take care of yourself. And after Sandy Hook, one of the things Wayne LaPierre said from the NRA, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Mm-hmm. And we just see this over and over again.
Right.
So if we could run that video, just a quick minute of it, that'd be great.
Says Paris should be a wake-up call for every American, and that we should be ready to challenge things that look out of the ordinary because we cannot wait for the police or the feds. Joining me now, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He is the chair of military theory at the Marine Corps University, and he also served as a prosecution expert in the Boston bombing trial. He also runs the GorkaBriefing.com. Dr. Gorka, thank you for being here tonight. So your position right now is that Paris is just the beginning, and we need to rely on ourselves. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at what's happened since the attacks on Friday, Megyn, it is clear that this wasn't just some spontaneous event done by people who had a grudge. This is organized. This is a network. This is international. This woman, if the reports are true, tried to entice the police closer to that house so she could kill them with an explosive device that had been prepared for this eventuality. So the message is very clear, Megyn. The jihad is real, the jihad is global, and they want to bring it to the shores of America. We have an article coming out in tomorrow's New York Post where we give you the stats. We've had 82 ISIS suspects arrested.
So you can, and I'll post the link later at the Ride Along Radio so you can see the entire interview. But I think he makes a very good point. And you know, there's a lot of people in denial, especially if they're following our current president's administration. They're in denial about the lethality of this threat, about the reality of this threat. And I think it's incumbent upon everybody to be prepared. Now, I'm going to add this. I'm going to add this one thing, and I'm sure that I'm going to get some pushback on this side of the table. If you can get a CCW,
wait, hold on.
Yeah, please
right,
do. Yeah,
right.
warm up, George.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready.
If you can get a CCW permit, I recommend you go do that. And you need to find trainers like these guys. Because, and I'm just saying, and not because you're sitting here, but the instructors that you had for that thing, the gunfighter course that I took, were top notch. One was a Navy SEAL. The other guy was just a bad mofo with, you know, a bunch of real world experience.
Thank you. Those guys top notch. I know exactly who you're talking about. Top notch guys.
And even me as been a shooter all my life,
right.
You know, and just with some minor modifications, you know, the Navy says, hey, do this and move your grip, adjust your grip a bit. Boom, I'm hitting 10s. I'm hitting that little plate. You know, and
I always remember, you know, having worked with you as a police officer, I remember you always have been very tactically sound anyway. Well, so for you to say that built you up even more is a quite a compliment.
And it just speaks to this need for ongoing training. You know, at my age, and you know, and I do all the things that I do, work with the dog, and all the stuff that I do. You know, training. It's just something that you pick up in law enforcement. But here's where I'm going to get the pushback is. I think if you can get a CCW, I think you should. I also think that if you can't get a CCW, you still better be prepared. You still have a responsibility to be prepared.
Well, you know what? And being prepared takes a bunch of forms. Being prepared could be your alert someplace. In that video, and you guys, when Gil posts the link later on, you'll tweet it and we'll retweet it or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Once that link comes out later and you can see the whole video, he talks about, the doctor, about growing up in the United Kingdom during the whole battle with the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. And you hear people who grew up in Europe, in Italy during the bad mafia years. You hear Israelis talk about it, how Israel is now. Mm-hmm. In any of those situations, you couldn't leave a bag on a train and get off the train without taking your bag, without somebody saying something about that, without somebody calling attention to it. Mm. You couldn't walk into a cafe in Rome and leave a backpack at a table or a briefcase someplace and leave. You certainly can't do that in Israel today because people are so aware of the security situation. This is something a lot of people don't know. One of the reasons that there are suicide bombers is because the old method of leaving a bomb behind wasn't working anymore. It used to be that the terrorists could come into a place like a cafe in Jerusalem, they could leave a briefcase, then they could get up and walk out. Well, after a while, the Israelis caught on to that, and you were no longer allowed to leave that location if you didn't take all your stuff with you. That was one of the reasons the suicide bombing came to be, was because in order for you to pull that off, you need to stay in place and blow it in place because it's not going to work otherwise.
Right. Exactly.
And so their security situation had a kind of unintended consequences because now we got the jihadi suicide bombers, but people are very aware. So you can be aware like that here. As you've said in previous shows, get some medical training. There's all kind of classes out there, ours included, especially ours. We have a really nice combat trauma care series that teaches you you get a medical kit, teaches you how to use the contents of the medical kit. Because, you know, sometime in these situations, and I'm sure it happened in Paris, it happened in the mall in Kenya, happens in mass shooting incidents everywhere. People don't always die right then and there.
That's right.
They die bleeding out, waiting for EMS to come, and the ambulance isn't coming until the shots have subsided, believe me.
Correct. Yeah, there's a saying is that people don't die from getting shot, they die from major organ damage and blood loss.
And blood loss, exactly, right? And so, you know, if you can be trained, you can train yourself to do that. And it doesn't just apply to a terrorist. You may be one of these people who thinks that'll never happen. But what if you get into a bad car accident?
Correct.
What if something else happens, some other catastrophic sort of thing happens?
Or the major earthquake. Which is coming in the next 32 months, according to JPL.
Wow. Well, you know what? Be ready for that, right? And so you need to have the skills to sustain yourself, even if you're not into guns. You still don't be foolish. Still have a way to prepare yourself, because even though you're not into guns, there's people out there who are.
Correct.
and they don't hesitate to use them. Now, we're going to go to the break. When we come back, Stan, I want you to talk about how people can get involved with your plan and what they need to do to contact you to be covered. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. All right, so welcome back to Ride Along Radio. Again, our calling number is 323-293-3375. Our topic of the day is civilians carrying concealed weapons, the pros and cons, and our in-studio guest is Stanley Campbell, the co-founder and COO of CCW SAFE, which is a service that offers kind of a prepaid legal. Is that a good?
We're not considered insurance nor a prepaid legal. It's a legal service membership plan.
Okay.
So it's kind of benefit services, kind of.
Like Aflac or something.
Wow, I love Gil. No, Gil, no. We don't have a bird.
No duck, huh?
just a gun.
Okay, so and if you carry concealed, obviously there's all kind of considerations, and we say this is about the pros and the cons. One of the cons is you must number one, be permitted if you are going to do this legally.
Correct.
Okay, just staying within the realm of legal obligation. In terms of personal obligation, that's an individual choice. Okay, but in terms of you doing this quote unquote the right way, just like anything else, and I really hate making this comparison to driving a car because that's a privilege and not a right. And I do look at gun ownership as a right as opposed to a privilege. But you need to make sure that you go get permitted, whatever the laws are in your jurisdiction. And then it's incumbent upon you, although you're not legally obligated to do it, and I'm not just saying this because I co-own a training company. You need to do what Gil said. Go out and get the training, and here's why. And back to the hated vehicle comparison, just like you drive a car and you have to have insurance, you don't have to have insurance to own a gun. Not yet, although there's people talking about that. If you shoot somebody, you can stand by to get sued. I mean, you just be prepared to be sued, okay? And whatever your thoughts are on George Zimmerman, who was a concealed weapon permit holder, and Trayvon Martin, you can rest assured there was litigation that followed that. Even though he was acquitted in the criminal court, you can rest assured that there was litigation behind that. And that's the way it always is. When a cop shoots somebody, you guys may remember the North Hollywood bank robbery that we had, and was it 97 out here in L.A., where you had two armed robbers go in head-to-toe, bulletproof gear and assault rifles, robbed a Bank of America, shot it out with LAPD, and they both died. One of the people's family had the nerve to sue because the guy died. Okay, so I bring that up to say that anytime you shoot somebody, no matter what the circumstances are, be prepared for some litigation. Right. So you got to have a service like this one, because if not, look what you stand to lose. And so, in addition to training, you should make sure that you are indemnified by some sort of legal plan.
Right.
And think about what you're going to do. Also, have a plan. Whenever I go into a place, whether it's a restaurant with my family, whether it's in Walmart by myself, I always look around. I'm tactically aware, and I know that you are too. I know you are too. We look around and kind of see what's going to go down before it goes down. And once you get an eye for that, you can confound and amaze your friends, because you can predict stuff that's getting ready to happen.
Absolutely.
And then when it happens right in front of you, they're like, well, how'd you know that was going to happen?
That's right.
Because I was paying attention.
That's right.
So if you're aware, you can get yourself away from a situation where you might have to use your gun. The last thing you want to do as a concealed weapons holder, concealed weapons carrier, and whether you call in your state, it may be called a CCW permit like we have here, carry concealed weapon permit, a CHL like in Texas, a concealed handgun license, a CHP, concealed handgun permit like they have in North Carolina. You want to stay out of situations that you have to use your gun to get you out of.
That's correct. Okay?
And so the last thing you need to do is think that you're invincible now, to think that you're all of a sudden a badass, you're born again hard now because you're carrying a gun, because all that's going to do is get you in trouble, and that's going to bring you into a situation where you have to explain yourself, right, as opposed to the situation explaining itself.
Right. And the smart trainers will tell you that if you have a concealed handgun on your person, no one should ever know it.
Oh, definitely not. And when it happens, and people, the three things we talk about we teach a concealed weapons class, not just the advanced one Gil took, but we teach a baseline class for CCW holders out of Orange County here in California. And the 3 C's we cover are comfort, for that gun to be comfortable, because if it's not, you're going to be touching it all the time, right? Which is a tell. and if it's not comfortable, you won't carry it. It needs to be under your control all the time to make sure it doesn't fall out or nobody else can get it or whatever.
Correct.
And the last C, of course, there's the concealability of it. It's called a concealed weapons permit for a reason. Now, apparently, there was a situation not too long ago where a gentleman was going into, again, Walmart. I don't know what it is with Walmart, but he was going into Walmart, and he's one of these guys that doesn't carry his gun on his person when he's driving around. He had it in the glove box. Totally within his right to do that as a concealed weapons permit holder, but I don't do that.
Right.
I'm carrying a gun. I'm carrying a gun.
Right.
Okay. But that's okay. So apparently, as he was reaching into the glove box to get the gun and clip it back inside his waistband, someone saw this. And as he was walking into the Walmart, they have that little area where you get your shopping cart from. As he was getting his shopping cart, all of a sudden, he gets tackled from behind by a guy. And the guy starts screaming, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. And then other people come and jump on the guy because they don't know, is he going to shoot up Walmart? Is he, is ISIS finally come to, our town or whatever?
Nowhere, USA.
Right. And so by not having that weapon concealed, the man brought a lot of drama on himself. And that's not to say that he did anything wrong legally. He just was kind of sloppy about it. Like you said, no one should know that you have that concealed weapon permit or a concealed weapon on you. There are some states, and again, I'm referencing back to North Carolina, they're pretty advanced with this. They just, they pretty much have pretty, compared to California at least, pretty open laws, pretty liberal laws when it comes to handgun permits. But one of the things they have, and they're talking about doing there, and they already have it in other states, is in North Carolina, your concealed weapon permit is tied to your driver license. And the reason it's tied to your driver license is if you get pulled over by the police, you're supposed to, number one, identify yourself as a concealed weapon permit holder and that you have a gun on you. So the officer knows that. But even if you don't do that, when they run your license, it's going to come back that you have a concealed weapon permit, which is going to then cause the officer to ask you, okay, do you have a gun on you? Well, some states are moving to having a little endorsement on your license that says that you're a concealed weapon permit holder. And you still have to carry your actual permit. But just like you have a motorcycle endorsement or you have to wear corrective lenses or whatever on your license here, they're going to have a little box or a symbol or something that says that you have a concealed weapon permit. Now, some people say, oh, that's convenient. And then that way you can show the officer that's a legitimate thing because it's a DMV document. But there's some issues with that. I mean, I don't want everybody I show my driver license to know I got a gun.
There's a bunch of issues with that. And don't give the state of California any more stupid ideas. When I went to Arizona not long ago to visit Kent Lee, his little compound out there, coming from California. So, we're out there in Arizona and we got up the next day, had breakfast and whatever, and we're going to go out for the day, right? And I go, hey, what do I do with my gun? Do I have to put it in a? What do I do with it? Do I just put it on? And he goes, Gil, you're in Arizona, for God's sakes. You can do what you want to. Wear it open carry if you want. Wear it concealed.
Well,
if you
he
want.
can say that because he's a resident there. But if you're not a resident in Arizona, you still need an Arizona CCW. You can't open carry though. You can't open carry. But if you're a resident of Arizona, you don't need a permit to conceal carry. But you could open carry all day long.
So
it's Arizona. You can't do that here.
One of the things that we do, we try to associate ourselves with the people that are leading in the industry. I spoke with you a little while ago during the break about Larry Vickers and Alexis Artwall. But we also associate ourselves with a phone app called Legal Heat. And what it does is it gives you real-time gun laws in each state. So as you travel, like Gil did, you can answer those questions for yourself.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Now, okay, so now how would someone get covered or get more information about your services?
Well, number one, like we spoke about, you have to have a concealed carry permit, either a resident or a non-resident.
That's
permit.
To start the process.
That's to start the process.
Okay.
We do support the Second Amendment, but we also want to have the filters in place so that we don't have any criminal element associated with our business and membership group.
Sure.
So we have to have them go through the process of having that.
That's a good way to vet your clientele, for sure.
Absolutely. So we do that, and then you can go to www.ccwsafe.com. We do a lot of online sales. You can also call our 800 number if you go to our website, and that's usually how it's done.
Okay. And what's the website again?
www.ccwsafe.com.
Okay.
The other thing that we did recently was we added a national trial counsel, and that's Attorney Don West out of Florida, who was over the Zimmerman trial. So he vets all of all of our attorneys in our network, and he takes care of our network to make sure we get the best attorneys for you in the state that you're in. A lot of times we choose attorneys that defend police officer shootings,
right?
Because usually
they know
experience.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. And, I think one of the last things I want to add, about the whole subject is criminals CCW every day,
all the time,
everywhere they go.
Yeah.
So, we can argue about laws and you should get a permit, and if you can, okay, if you can, and great. Criminals don't.
No, they don't. They don't even think about it.
Criminals don't, and so I say if you can't get a CCW, I'm going to take my chances. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
Yeah, sure. No, I can't argue with that, man.
And if I can articulate that my actions were reasonable at the time, given the circumstances, I should come out okay.
First strike's only a misdemeanor anyway, in California at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hey, sue us. Anyway, all right. So we're gonna start wrapping it up, and at the end of each show, we've been trying to do like a tip of the week, and one of the things we're going to do this week, we're going to do legal term of the week, because one of the things that drives me crazy is when people mix up their terms, and people like to use homicide and murder interchangeably. Okay, Quentin Tarantino recently referred to all the police murders that are going on in this country, right, when in actuality, people being murdered by the police is a very rare occurrence. Yeah, I know. People being killed by the police happens quite often, but actually being murdered is something different. And I'm going to read to you. First, I'm going to give you the definition, the California Penal Code Section 187. For those of you outside of California, you probably still know that 187 stands for murder because it's been popularized in rap culture. And I know this is off the top of my head from the academy, just like you do, right? Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being or fetus with malice aforethought. Those are the entire elements. A human being, the unlawful killing of a human being or fetus with malice aforethought. That's the California state definition of murder. Now, there's other sections under that, and there's different degrees of murder that enhance that. But the baseline definition of murder is that. But for those of you outside of California, let me give you the federal definition of murder, okay? And this is that murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. Every murder perpetrated by poison, lying in wait, or any other kind of willful, deliberate, malicious, and premeditated killing, or committed in the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate any arson, escape, murder, kidnapping, treason, espionage, sabotage, aggravated sexual abuse or sexual abuse, child abuse, burglary, or robbery, or perpetrated as part of a pattern or practice of assault or torture against a child or children, or perpetrated from a premeditated design unlawfully and maliciously to effect the death of any human being other than him who is killed, is murder in the first degree. Any other murder is murder in the second degree. So remember, we got homicide, and under homicide, murder is a subcategory. Because homicide, when somebody gets a death penalty carried out, that legally is homicide. Okay? It's not murder because it's not an unlawful killing. It's homicide. So you hit somebody with your car and you kill them, whether it's by accident or not. That falls under homicide because one human being has caused the death of another human being. It's homicide. It's not murder. They are not the same thing. And we're going to get into burglary and robbery and the difference between those two. So people stop telling me that their house got robbed. We're going to get into that on a future show. Again, we're about to shut the call line down because we're about to close out the show. But you can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram at Ride Along Radio Show. Or you can send us an email, ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. Also, later on, this show will be uploaded to YouTube and to Podbean for the podcast. Feel free to leave your comments on the YouTube page. We do monitor those. And if you have any ideas for future show topics or any guests that you'd like to see us get, send us an email to that email address, ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. I want to thank our guest, Stanley Campbell.
Thank you, sir,
for coming in. Good to have you here today, sir.
Thanks for being here.
I want to thank my co-host, Gil Contreras, who came in and stood up to the plate today and hit a home run with that topic there. Intern Darren, thank you, sir, for all your help. Our producer, the poetess, a.k.a. Fact Frida. Thanks for stepping up and making this all happen for us. And we will catch you guys next week. We're not on this Thursday because it's Thanksgiving, but we'll be back the first Thursday in December. Same time, same channel. Take care. Be safe.